Yo, what's going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you another 7 Daily Sins Grand Cross video. For this, we'll be going over PvP for the basics and giving you guys an intro to how PvP works, all the fun things in PvP, and what your PvP team build should look like, all those things. And this is a just beginner guide. This is not advanced tips and tricks. This is not, hey, you should only do this. Just the beginner guide to get you started so you know exactly where to go. So guys, without further ado, let's go and jump right into it. Alright guys, going into PvP, there are two forms of PvP. First off, we have geared PvP and gearless PvP. Let's break them down very simply. Geared PvP, which is the one I'm on right now, is actually for more PvP coins. PvP coins are very valuable because they are used to purchase weapons for your characters for costumes, and they're also used to buy anvils and other things that you need for PvP in order to progress. It also helps you progress in PvE because you were able to get stuff that helps you roll your other gear, as well as get you weapons to make your characters more powerful when you're doing PvE content. So overall, it is a definite thing to do. Gearless PvP will provide you gems every single week so you can do more pulls and help your account build out a little bit more well-rounded as well. Now, all players are only going to start with gearless PvP, and they are not going to start with geared PvP. So in gearless PvP, you're going to actually need to progress all the way in your ranking system from when you start all the way at bronze all the way up to gold 5. And once you reach gold 5, you're going to be unlocking geared PvP. Geared PvP is kind of a little bit harder at the start of it. Once you get used to it, though, it becomes much easier than gearless PvP because you're gonna be fighting characters without gear sometimes, which is really funny. And I'll go over that in a little bit and why that's awesome. So gearless PvP is much more difficult than geared PvP. So if you get turned off by PvP because of gearless PvP is very difficult, I totally understand. Once you get to gold 5, geared PvP is much more enjoyable than gearless PvP. And there's going to be tons of reasons that you find why it's more enjoyable, but the main portion is you got to get to gold 5 first. So in gearless PvP, there are two main factors that really help your teams get stronger. The first factor, of course, is going to be your level, your characters' awakening stars, all the fun things there, all the stats that you get on characters that are just base stats that add on top of it. It could be your ultimate level, could be your base attack, base HP increases, the level, this awakening star level that you see here. All of those things will help you in gearless PvP. But the second thing that is much harder to obtain and is the big pay to win thing on launch, but definitely becomes more enjoyable as time goes on because more costumes come along as time goes on, is costumes. Costumes are a huge part of gearless PvP. Each costume, as you can see, is providing a stat bonus to your characters, giving you an extra 180 defense for costumes, extra 120 or 180 attack, as well as other substats, as well as HP stats that you're getting on your characters that you're going to get from every single costume. All of these stat bonuses work in gearless PvP and can give you a significant advantage over other players. So if you do have more costumes, you will do better. Now, costumes can be acquired in multiple ways. Now, you can acquire costumes by awakening your characters so that you go from level 50 to level 60, other versions of other characters so that you can get those kinds of costumes, but those types of things are how you get the most amount of costumes. Now, King on launch is not Red King, but the Blue King is probably the best character for costumes on launch because there's two versions of King. There's both the blue version of King, which looks like this, and you're going to have the green version of King, who looks like this. And both of those characters are going to give you 4 total costumes on launch, which is a very significant amount. And he's also going to give you a large amount of weapons that you can get free to play. He's a very good character for free to play players because of all the free to play upgrades that you can put on him that allows you to get lots and lots of costumes. He also has a significantly high base stats because of, you know, he's a Sin and he's a coin cap character, so he's really good. So overall, King is probably one of the best characters. Blue King is what you can get. A lot of Red Kings later, so just know they're the same costumes, by the way. So overall, that's what you really need to focus on for gearless PvP. Ultimate level, costumes, awakening level, actual character level, those are the things that factor into gearless PvP to get you most stats. Geared PvP, however, is going to take into consideration all the gear that you have on character plus all the things I've just mentioned. And this can create massive valleys in power, which is actually what makes PvP fun when you start ramping up. So once your character and your account starts building out really well and you start progressing in the game, you'll notice you can go to gear PvP and just like dominate people. And you're like, yeah, bump. And this is actually a semi-pay to win, semi-free to play thing where you're able to progress very quickly in geared PvP, because what happens in geared PvP is it's going to take whatever PvP team that the current player has on their account, and then all the gear that they have on those characters currently. Now, if you move gear off of those characters you're now fighting without gear, giving you a significant advantage against their AI character or their bot. So in geared PvP, you're going to fight a significant amount of bots as well as normal players, because you can't fight every player in the game every 10 seconds. So geared PvP becomes much more enjoyable because you can just blow through it really quick and get really high rank really fast and then start fighting the top players. So it's very good for getting the rankings. Geared PvP is probably a lot easier than Gearless PvP, because Gearless PvP is a very, very pay-to-win mode, whereas Geared PvP is more of a grind and results thing. And Gearless PvP, you can still progress very far, get very high ranking rewards in there if you know how to build your characters correctly and know what to invest in and what not to invest in. Definitely good there. So next thing we're going to be going over are PvP strategies. Now, I have this whole list on Reddit going over all the different strategies that you can use, and there's a lot of different types of strategies. Now, the one you see on the stream is a skill nuke strategy. Now, there's 3 main strategies to PvP. The first strategy, which is the one not listed here, is ultimate push. I'll go over that in a second. I'm not going to go over it yet, but the second one I'm going over right now is a skill nuke strategy. Now, this strategy is essentially based around you killing the enemy very quickly with single target abilities or area effect abilities that are from your main core kit. And these rely on you just bopping the enemy really hard early on, and you do very, very well. These teams rely very heavily on like Blue Meliodas, Blue Lilia, Green's Coin Shot Bomb, which is one of the characters on launch. He does this very, very well. Green, that's our Lizhawk. Red Hauser. And green or red Escanor. Both of them are really good. These are characters that really just come out swinging and do tons and tons of damage with their skills and don't really rely on their ultimates to do damage, but their ultimates can still do very well. Now, these are some of the more popular teams because these teams are much faster for progressing through PvP and are very, very good in ranking ranking up very, very quick. So those are the teams that are very, very strong for that. These skill nuke teams are also very popular because Demon Meliodas is on the team and he's hyped as fuck. So on launch of Global, this is kind of another example of a nuke team. This is a team build that you can build on the second week of the game where you're using Blue King, Green Meliodas, Green Coin Shot Bond, and of course Jillian to get yourself a nice amount of damage, lots of HP on your characters, and all-around skill nuke. So this is a skill nuke-based team. And this is probably where the game started and where people were really going at the start of the game for big meta damage, all that stuff. And that's probably one of the strongest teams on launch, and it didn't really hold up, by the way. It only lasted for a little bit. Now, ignore the CP values here. I'm not going to be putting gear on characters. I'm just, I got stuff to do, so we can't do that. But this is next up. We have the ultimate push strategy. Now, this came out probably about the 6th week in the game. This team came out because Coin Shop Merlin came out and is probably the best team build strategy in the game for a very, very long time, which is super frustrating. Now, the strongest team in the game, you'll hear this term a lot. This is the Kingbrum team. Now, this team relies heavily on ultimate pushing, petrifies, and lots of annoyance, attack ceiling, and all that. So overall, this is the strongest PvP team for the longest amount of time. If you're wondering what the best PvP team is for the longest amount of time, it's this one. This is called Kingbrum. This is a very boring team after a certain amount of time. So if you wanted to build this team, it's still strong to this day, but people know how to counter it. They know how to play around it. Even though you can still win against it, it still has a very high win ratio. Strongest team in the game. for the longest amount of time. And one of the reasons this team is so good is because Gother and King work very well together. Helbram also works well with Gother as well, so there's lots of synergy here. And there's tons of stuff here. So the whole team strategy around this team is based on pushing your ultimate very, very quickly. Now, this is called an ultimate push strategy. Essentially, what you want to do is have your ultimates up on either turn 1 or turn 2, just to make it so that your team is going to completely obliterate the enemy team with ultimates. And that's it. There's nothing else to the strategy. The way that you achieve that is that you're able to use Coin Shop Merlin. Coin Shop Merlin is going to push the ultimates of all characters by +1. And the other thing you're going to do with this team is you're going to also use this food that will increase your ultimate gauge by +1, giving you another +1 to your ultimate gauge. So if you start first, you are going to start the entire fight with your entire team at +2 ultimate gauge. Each character has 5 ultimate gauge, so you can see how quick you can actually get your ultimate with this team. If you start second, however, you're actually going to start with 3 ultimate gauge. So you can actually go on turn 2 with 2 ultimates, which is very strong. So just know that this team, very strong for a very long time. The fact that you can get multiple ultimates off, you can use petrifies to counter characters that would kill you. There's heal on this team that will never stop being good because it's a percentage missing HP heal. All these characters are extremely, extremely strong. Green CS Merlin and Blue King are extremely good together. Now, for the first few weeks, because you're not able to get Green Merlin, this team isn't as strong. So there are other characters that people were using in the backline to get your ultimates up in different ways. Like you were able to use ultimate gauge food, but you were using characters like Kill Thunder in the backline to help you out with the little extra sustain. You were using characters like Griamore to boost everybody's HP. There are other ways of getting around that so you can get your ultimate up. That's what some people were doing in order to get that done. But essentially, the whole strategy is just around you getting your ultimate and blowing the other team away. All right, and the third and final strategy for PvP is the tank and counter nuke strategy. This team relies heavily on defensive skills in order to counter high damage attacks and give you a nuke to counter it. I'll go over the counter builds in just a second, so you'll understand what's good against what. But essentially, this team composition and strategy is based around you taking damage to a very, very low amount. So people using attack skills on you, you take almost no damage. Characters like Valenti, which is an original character that comes a few months after the game launches, as one way of doing that. This strategy came out much later. On launch, this is not really available. There are other ways of doing this, like with Green Griamore and using SR Guild Thunder together. That is a way to do it on launch, but it's not nearly as effective as what I have on the screen. This team relies on you building up your character slowly and then all of a sudden bopping the enemy team. So if they're using high skill damage against you, once you get your ultimate, you basically have instant win button, and you're able to tank them so well that it doesn't matter. The whole team relies on you tanking and ultimating. So the counter builds and strategies are really interesting across the board. First off, nuke teams are very, very strong against ultimate teams. So if you go first on a nuke team, which is one of the first teams I had on the screen, which was this Escanor, Meliodas, Lilia team, which is kind of similar to that CS Bond team that I had on the screen. Those are really good against ultimate teams because if you go first in those teams, you're doing such a significant amount of damage to the entire enemy team that they can't really try to push their ultimates at a very fast pace, and it does very well against ultimate push teams. However, tank teams are much stronger against nuke teams. Any team that's relying on you doing tons of damage with your skills, this team will do very well against because it tanks all that damage and makes it so that when they want to ultimate, they're able to just bop the enemy team with their ultimate. So tank strategies are very, very good against nuke teams. However, these tank teams are not invulnerable. They're actually very vulnerable to the second team I showed, which was the King Room team. They're very vulnerable to ultimate pushing teams because the tankiness that they provide is only good against really lower percent skills, which are basically the skills that enemies are using against you before their ultimate. And ultimate teams, which teams where you're actually pushing your ultimate very quickly, do very well against tank teams because they're just able to destroy the enemy tank team very easily because of how much damage they're doing in their single hits. So the rotation goes kind of nuke teams are better than ultimate teams, tank teams are better than nuke teams, and ultimate teams are better than tank teams. So as time has progressed on, this strategy has kind of held true as the entire game has progressed. Now, tank teams have kind of changed for, instead of now tanking all the enemy's damage, you're actually switching to more of countering the enemy damage with like Estarossa and things like that. So there are a lot of strategies that get put in the mix in between. It really just depends on the week and how you're going to be doing your PvP strategy. But for the most part, what I've described really helps. Counter teams and tank teams are pretty similar though. But as far as PvP goes, there are many different PvP strategies. There's combinations of the two. People use tank teams and nuke teams together. Sometimes use hybrids of ultimate teams and nuke teams. It really just depends on what strategy you feel is going to be best, and you're gonna have to play around with your units in order to figure out what the best team is. But guys, this should help you get you a nice little start in PvP, so you can actually understand what the best PvP team would be going forward is and how you would want to build your team strategies after that. I will go over week to week different PvP team builds that I have used in the past, and I'll be going over lots of different PvP strategies that you could use for more advanced tactics as time goes on. But having said that, guys, my name's Sekapoko. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, of course, like and subscribe, all the fun stuff, and you guys have a great rest of your day.